The chamber door sealed behind me with a sound like a held breath being cut off, and I understood, right then, that I was not walking into a meeting. I was walking into a verdict. My name is Daniel Okafor, and 3 hours earlier, I had been the least important person on this ship. Now I was standing on a floor made of black water that did not ripple, facing a throne built from coral and bone, and above me sat something that could end my entire species with a single word. The Hive Queen of the Salvex Dominion did not look at me like a person looks at another person. She looked at me the way you look at an insect that has wandered onto your dinner table. Her eyes were the color of drowned stars, and there were 6 of them, and every single one was fixed on the human delegation standing at the center of her throne room. Beside me, our lead diplomat, a tired woman named Grace Whitfield, was doing her best to keep her voice steady, as the translation drones repeated our case for the 3rd time. It was not going well. The Queen's court had already begun making the low clicking sound that our advisors told us meant contempt. Some of the Queen's attendants were not even looking at us anymore. They were looking past us, like we were furniture that had briefly become interesting, and had now stopped being interesting. I was only in that room because someone needed a linguist to double-check the translation drones, and I happened to have clearance. That was the whole reason. I study dead languages for a living. I spend my days with fragments of alphabets nobody speaks anymore, piecing together the voices of people who have been gone for thousands of years. It is quiet work. It is supposed to be safe work. Nothing about it prepared me to stand in front of a creature who could decide, with one flick of her long fingers, whether humanity would be spared or erased. Your species, the Queen said, and her voice came out through the drones in flat, mechanical English, shows no unifying purpose. No single will. You fight among yourselves even now, on your own world. Such disorder cannot be permitted to spread beyond your system. Grace tried to answer, something about diversity being a strength, something about how disagreement does not mean disunity, but I could see it was not landing. The Queen's attendance had already begun to shift, the way a crowd shifts right before it turns its back on you. That was when I saw it. On the wall behind the throne, carved into the black stone, was a pattern of symbols, circles inside circles, with small hooked lines branching off like roots. My whole body went cold, because I knew that pattern. I had spent 4 years of my life staring at symbols exactly like it. 6 years earlier, before any of this, before the Dominion, before any of us knew aliens were even real, a research team on Earth had pulled a broken metal object out of a glacier in Iceland. It was old. Impossibly old. Most people thought it was a hoax or a strange piece of forgotten military hardware. I was the graduate student nobody else wanted, so I got assigned to it. Inside that metal shell was a language, not a human language, a language built from circles and hooked lines, etched onto thin sheets that had somehow survived thousands of years of ice. I spent 4 years alone with that language, when nobody else cared. When my professors told me I was wasting my life on a dead end, I built a dictionary out of nothing. I learned to read a tongue that, as far as I knew, no living being had spoken in longer than human civilization had existed. And there it was, carved above the throne of a queen who could destroy my entire planet without blinking. I do not fully know why I did what I did next. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was some instinct buried under years of quiet study. But as the Queen raised one long hand, the gesture our advisors had warned us meant a decision was about to be spoken. I stepped forward, past Grace, past the edge of what I was supposed to do, and I spoke 4 words in a language that had not been spoken out loud in this galaxy for longer than anyone in that room could imagine. The words meant, roughly, spare the small and unformed, for even the smallest root remembers the tree. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The clicking stopped. The drone stopped translating, because for a moment there was nothing to translating. Every attendant in that chamber froze, their long limbs locked mid-motion, their eyes all turning toward me at once. And the Queen herself, who had not moved a single muscle since we entered, went rigid on her throne, her raised hand trembling in the air. Her 6 eyes fixed on me, and for the first time since we had arrived, I saw something other than contempt in them. I saw shock. I saw something close to fear. "Human," she said, and her voice was different now, no longer flat and mechanical through the drones, but low, and slow, and careful, like each word cost her something. "How do you know our forgotten language?" I felt Grace go still beside me. I felt every human in that room hold their breath at once. "It is not yours," I said, and my voice shook, but I kept going. I read it in old writings. Writings that were not made by your people. The Queen rose from her throne. It was the first time she had moved in the entire meeting. and the whole court flinched back from her as she did it, like she was something dangerous even to them. She descended the steps toward me, slow, deliberate, until she was close enough that I could see the fine cracks in the shell along her jaw, cracks she had likely hidden under ceremony and armor for longer than I had been alive. "That tongue," she said, "belonged to the Keltari. A people who came before the Dominion, a people my ancestors conquered, and silenced, and erased from every record we keep, so completely that even I, born of that same bloodline, was never taught a single word of it. It was forbidden. It was meant to be gone. Forgotten so deeply that even guilt could not find it." She paused, and her voice cracked, just slightly, in a way I do not think the drones could have translated even if they tried. "Tell me where a short-lived, disordered species found the voice of a people my own family destroyed." So I told her. I told her about the glacier, and the broken metal shell, and the 4 lonely years I spent decoding a language nobody on Earth thought mattered. I told her that we did not know what it was. We did not know it belonged to a real people who had been wiped from the stars. We simply found fragments of a voice, and because that is what my species does, because we cannot stand to let a voice disappear even when it costs us nothing to let it go, we saved it anyway. "You did not know its weight," the Queen said quietly, "and still you kept it." "We keep everything," I said. "Every dead language, every broken carving, every song nobody sings anymore. We do not always know why it matters. We just cannot let it disappear." The Queen turned away from me, toward her own attendants, and for a long moment she said nothing at all. The court that had been ready to condemn us only minutes earlier was now completely still, waiting on her, the way I imagine a forest waits before a storm decides which way to break. "There are those in this chamber," she finally said, "who would call what you have just done a violation, an insult to the Dominion's history, spoken by an unranked species with no right to know it. They would silence you, the way my ancestors silenced the ones who first spoke those words." She turned back to face me, and something in her posture had changed. Something had softened, though I do not think softened is quite the right word for a creature like her. And there are others, myself among them, who wonder if this is not an insult at all, but a mercy we did not deserve and never expected. Grace found her voice again beside me, careful and steady. "We are not here to threaten your history, Your Highness. We did not even know what we were carrying. But if it matters to you, we will guard it. That is what my species does with things that matter. We do not always understand them right away. We simply refuse to let them go." The Queen studied us both for a long moment, her 6 eyes moving slowly between our faces, and I understood then that we were no longer standing in a tribunal about whether humanity deserved to exist. We had stumbled into something older and stranger, a wound inside the Dominion itself that had been hidden for longer than human history had been written. "I will not pretend your species is without disorder," the Queen finally said, "but disorder is not the same as worthlessness. A people who preserve what they do not understand, simply because it deserves to be remembered, are not a people I am prepared to erase today." She raised her hand again, but this time the gesture was different, slower, almost gentle. "The tribunal is closed. Humanity will not be culled. You will remain under provisional protection of the Dominion, pending further contact." The court around us broke into low murmurs, some clearly displeased, but none of them dared speak against her, not after what they had just witnessed. The Queen looked at me one last time before she turned back toward her throne. "You will teach me," she said, "every word you know, every fragment. I will not let my ancestors' silence be the last thing spoken of the Keltari, not while a human stands here who remembers what I was never allowed to learn." I nodded, because there was nothing else to say, and because some part of me, the same part that had spent 4 lonely years with a dead language nobody else believed in, understood exactly what she was asking for. We left that chamber alive, all of us, walking back through the black water floor that still did not ripple beneath our feet. Nobody spoke until the doors sealed behind us again, and even then, none of us quite knew how to explain what had just happened. I think about it often now, the fact that humanity's habit of saving things nobody else cared about, our stubborn refusal to let old voices disappear, turned out to be the very thing that saved us. We did not walk into that chamber with weapons or with power. We walked in with patience and memory and a strange kind of love for things long gone. It turns out that in a galaxy built on forgetting, remembering was the most dangerous thing a person could do, and it may have been the only thing that ever truly mattered.